I never believed in gut feelings until I met Olivia. Before her, I thought suspicion was just paranoia, that doubts only came from insecurity. But then little things started happening. The way she would tilt her phone away when texting. The way she suddenly had a password on apps she never used to lock. The way she laughed less around me, but smiled too easily at her screen. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was stress, work, maybe just a phase. But deep down, something itched at the back of my skull, whispering that something was wrong. The whispers turned into a scream the night I reached for her phone while she was asleep. It wasn't planned. I just saw it there, screened down on the nightstand, and something inside me made a decision before I could think. I picked it up. The lock screen glowed, innocent. But I wasn't stupid. I had watched her enter the code a dozen times before. For numbers. Simple. I punched them in. The phone unlocked. A part of me hoped I would find nothing. That I would feel like an idiot for doubting her. That I would put the phone back, kiss her forehead, and tell myself I was just overthinking. But I knew better. I went straight to her gallery. The photos were clean, too clean. I checked the trash folder. Empty. That's when I realized she was covering her tracks. So I downloaded a data recovery app. Simple, fast, brutal. A loading bar, a minute of waiting, and then her deleted photos reappeared. Most were harmless. A couple of old selfies, vacation pictures, screenshots of conversations I didn't care about. And then I found the first one, a mirror selfie. Nothing unusual until I looked closer. A hand on her waist. Not mine. My stomach tightened. I kept scrolling. Another photo. A familiar background. A hotel room. Not one we had ever stayed in. Then a screenshot. A text thread. My name saved under a fake contact. But another name, one I didn't recognize, had a heart next to it. I clenched my jaw and scrolled faster. Then I found it. The last picture. The one that made my lips curl into a cold, knowing smile. A photo taken in my own apartment. On my bed. My head went quiet. No sadness. Just an eerie kind of stillness. She had been careful, but not careful enough. She thought she had erased the evidence. She thought she could delete the truth. But now I held it all in my hands. And I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make her break. I sat there, staring at the screen, my grip tightening around her phone. The pictures, the messages, the proof of everything I had ignored for weeks, it was all right there. But I didn't feel the way I expected. No heartbreak, no doubt. Just a slow, creeping coldness settling in my chest. She had been careful, methodical, erasing every trace. She thought she had covered her tracks. But now, I had everything, and I wasn't going to waste it. I placed her phone back exactly where I found it, making sure nothing looked out of place. I took one last look at her, sleeping soundly, oblivious to the fact that her world had already begun to collapse. Tomorrow, the game would begin. The next morning, Olivia acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled like she always did, scrolling through her phone as she sipped her coffee. It took everything in me not to laugh. She had no idea. I leaned against the counter, watching her closely. "You were tossing and turning last night," I said casually. She looked up surprised. "Really? I don't remember that." "Lie." She was too good at it. Too smooth. I smirked. "Yeah, thought you were having a bad dream." She shrugged, brushing it off, then changed the subject. Classic deflection. I played along. For now. Phase 1 of my plan was simple. Plant the seed of paranoia. She thought she had deleted the evidence, so I decided to bring it back. Subtly, carefully. Just enough to make her second-guess herself. That afternoon, while she was in the shower, I took her phone again. I restored one of the deleted photos. Just one. Not the most obvious one. Not the hotel room. Not the texts. Just a mirror selfie. The one with his hand on her waist. And I placed it back in her gallery, under a random date hidden between ordinary pictures. Then I waited. That night, I watched her from across the room as she scrolled through her phone. Then it happened. Her fingers froze. Her breath hitched. Her whole body stiffened for just a second. She had seen it. I saw the way her thumb hesitated over the screen. The way her eyes darted toward me without moving her head. She was panicking, trying to figure out if she had made a mistake. But she couldn't ask me about it. Because if she did, she'd have to explain why it was there in the first place. So instead, she sat there, pretending everything was fine, her mind racing in circles. And I just smiled, because now, she was afraid. I could see it in her eyes, the creeping panic, the way her fingers twitched when she thought I wasn't looking. She was unraveling, and I had barely begun. She kept checking her phone, pretending to scroll casually, but I knew she was looking for more. She was searching, trying to understand how that photo had come back. Did she forget to delete it? Did it restore itself? Was her mind playing tricks on her? She wouldn't dare ask me, because if she did, she'd have to admit what she had done. So she kept it inside, letting it eat away at her. And I just watched. The next step was simple. I needed her paranoia to grow. I needed her to feel like she was losing control. So I planted the next seed. While she was asleep, I grabbed her phone again. This time, I went into her deleted messages folder, the one she had so carefully erased. I restored just one, a short, simple text from him. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." And then I left it there, unopened, unread, sitting in her inbox like a ticking time bomb. I put her phone back, climbed into bed beside her, and closed my eyes. I could already imagine how the morning would go. She found it at breakfast. I knew the exact moment it happened. Her body tensed, her breath caught, and for a fraction of a second, her hand trembled. She was holding her phone under the table, trying to stay calm, but I could feel the shift in the air. I sipped my coffee, pretending not to notice. "You okay?" She forced a smile, but I saw the sweat forming on the back of her neck. "Yeah, just work stuff. Liar." I leaned back in my chair, watching her struggle to keep it together. She was probably debating whether to delete the message immediately or check it again to be sure it was real. Either way, she was slipping, and I wasn't done yet. That evening, I set the next trap. She had been avoiding me all day, lost in her own head, barely speaking. I could tell she wanted to check her phone when I wasn't around. So I gave her space. I told her I was heading out for a bit, grabbing a drink with an old friend. Something harmless, believable. She nodded too quickly. "Oh, okay. Yeah, have fun." She wanted me gone. Perfect. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove down the street. Then I parked and waited. 10 minutes later, she thought she was alone. I watched from my screen as the house Wi-Fi showed a new device connection, her laptop. She was checking everything. Photos, messages, call logs. She was digging through her own phone like she was searching for a ghost, trying to figure out what was happening. I could only imagine her pulse racing, her hands shaking as she tried to piece it together. She didn't know who was behind it. She didn't know if it was me, or if her own past was haunting her. And that was exactly what I wanted. She thought she was alone. She thought she had time to breathe, to figure out what was happening before I came back. But what she didn't know was that I was watching her panic in real time. As soon as I left, she had rushed to her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard, searching for an answer, a way to make sense of the impossible. Because to her, that's what this was, impossible. She had been careful. She had erased everything. So how was it coming back? I imagined her chest tightening as she scrolled through her messages again, her breath catching when she saw the restored text. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." It was real, still there, staring back at her like a ghost from the past. I pictured her clicking through her photos, hoping, praying, that the mirror selfie had somehow been a mistake. But it wasn't. It was right where I left it, sitting between two harmless vacation pictures, waiting for her to find it again. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was terrified, and I was just getting started. After an hour, I decided to come home. I wanted to see her face, to watch her try and act normal when her entire world was crumbling. As I walked through the door, I felt the tension in the air immediately. She was sitting on the couch, laptop open, but I knew she wasn't really looking at the screen. Her eyes were glazed over, her mind somewhere else entirely. She looked up too quickly when I stepped inside. Guilty. I dropped my keys on the counter. "Hey," she swallowed. "Hey, you're back early." I shrugged. Yeah, it wasn't that fun. I walked over, peering at her laptop screen. Blank document. She had closed whatever she was looking at the moment she heard the door open. I smirked inside. I sat down next to her, leaning in just a little. She stiffened, even guiltier. Everything okay? I asked, tilting my head. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, just catching up on emails. Liar. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I reached for my phone, scrolling casually. Oh, by the way, I was thinking of cleaning out my phone this weekend. Maybe clearing some old messages, photos. You know, just to free up space. I heard her breath hitch. She forced a laugh. Oh, yeah, I should probably do that too. She was crumbling. I wanted to see how far I could push. So I leaned back against the couch, pretending to be lost in thought. Then, in the most casual voice I could manage, I said, Hey, you ever get that feeling that you forgot to delete something? I felt her entire body go rigid. She turned to me slowly, her face frozen in a mask of forced calm. What? I shrugged. Like, you know, when you think you deleted a text or a photo, but later it randomly pops up again? I swear that's happened to me before. She went completely still. I could almost hear her heart pounding. I let the words sink in, watched as the thoughts raced behind her eyes. Does he know? Is he testing me? Is this a coincidence or a trap? She was unraveling faster than I expected. Good. I stood up, stretching. Anyway, I'm gonna show it. I turned, then paused at the hallway. You should clear your phone too. You never know what might still be in there. I didn't look back, but I knew. She was already reaching for her phone, her fingers shaking as she unlocked it. She would spend the next hour going through everything, deleting, rechecking, trying to convince herself that she was still in control. But she wasn't. I was. She thought she had time. She thought she could fix it. As soon as I left the room, I knew she would grab her phone and start deleting again, desperately trying to wipe away what had already been seen. But I had planned for this. I wasn't just watching her panic. I was guiding it. And tonight, I was going to push her over the edge. I waited exactly 30 minutes before walking back into the room. She was curled up on the couch, phone in her lap, screen dimmed like she had just locked it a second before I walked in. Too slow, Olivia. I sat down beside her, close enough to make her uncomfortable. She tensed but tried to play it off, forcing a yawn. Tired? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, long day. Liar. She wasn't tired. She was exhausted from her own paranoia, from checking and rechecking her phone, from convincing herself that maybe, just maybe, she had imagined everything. But I wasn't going to let her rest. Not yet. I pulled out my own phone and tapped the screen a few times, pretending to scroll. Then, in the most casual voice I could manage, I said, Weirdest thing happened earlier. Her fingers twitched. Oh, I sighed, shaking my head. Yeah, I was looking through some old messages on my laptop, and this notification popped up. Something about a deleted file being recovered. I chuckled. Kind of freaked me out. Thought I had gotten hacked or something. Silence. I turned my head just enough to catch her reaction. She wasn't blinking. Her hands had tightened into fists in her lap. Her breathing had changed. Hook. Line. Sinker. I ran a hand through my hair, pretending to think. I don't know, maybe it was a glitch or something. I turned to her, smiling just enough to make her doubt everything. You ever have that happen? She swallowed hard. What? You know? I shrugged. Stuff you thought you deleted showing up again? For a split second, I saw the rawest fear I had ever seen in someone's eyes. Then, just as quickly, she forced a shaky laugh. No, I don't think so. Why? A bad one. She was breaking piece by piece, and I didn't even have to say anything direct. I was letting her destroy herself. That night, I pretended to fall asleep first. I stayed perfectly still, breathing slow and deep, listening. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. And just like clockwork, as soon as she thought I was asleep, she slipped out of bed, tiptoeing across the room. I barely cracked my eyes open, watching her silhouette illuminated by the glow of her phone screen. She was deleting things again, one by one, desperately swiping, erasing, double-checking. She was so frantic she didn't notice that I had already restored everything to her cloud. Let her delete. Let her struggle. It didn't matter. Nothing she did could save her now. I let my lips curl into a slow, cold smile. Because tomorrow, I would show her just how powerless she really was. She barely slept that night. I heard her shifting under the covers, her breaths uneven, her mind racing. Every so often, I felt her move, reaching for her phone, checking it again and again, as if the evidence of her betrayal might magically disappear. It wouldn't. By morning, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, movements sluggish, her usual fake smiles nowhere to be found. She barely touched her coffee, barely spoke. I didn't ask if she was okay. I didn't need to. I already knew. She was drowning. And today, I was going to pull her under completely. She left for work like normal, or at least she tried to. She kissed me goodbye at the door, forcing the same routine as always, but her lips were cold, her hands unsteady. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed her laptop. It took me less than 5 minutes to finish setting up the final part of my plan. I synced her deleted files again, making sure they would reappear not just on her phone, but on her work laptop too. This time though, I made one small change. I changed the dates. Now, instead of those photos and messages being from months ago, they looked brand new. Fresh evidence. Undeniable proof that she hadn't stopped, that she was still cheating. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. She thought she had been careful, thought she had erased everything. She didn't realize I was the one writing the ending to her story. A few hours later, I got the text I'd been waiting for. "Olivia, something's wrong with my laptop. Can you call me?" I let her sit with the panic for a while before replying. "Me? What do you mean?" Less than 10 seconds later, my phone rang. I answered casually. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was shaky. "I don't know what's going on. My laptop, things are showing up that shouldn't be there." I let the silence stretch. "Like what?" She hesitated. I knew why. She couldn't say it out loud. If she did, it would confirm everything. Finally, she whispered, "Photos. Messages." I kept my tone calm. "You mean ones you thought you deleted?" Her sharp inhale was all I needed to hear. I imagined her sitting there in her office, hands shaking over her keyboard, trying to figure out if she was losing her mind or if she had just been caught. She let out a weak laugh, trying to play it off. "It's probably just a glitch or something, right?" I smiled. "Yeah, probably." She wanted me to reassure her. She needed me to say something to make it all go away. But I didn't. I just let her sit in the silence, let her overthink, let her spiral further. And when she finally hung up, I knew. She wasn't just afraid anymore. She was terrified. That night, she came home quieter than usual. She barely spoke, barely ate, barely looked at me. I could tell she had spent the whole day trying to fix whatever she thought had gone wrong. She still didn't know the truth, that there was no glitch, that she wasn't losing her mind, that I was the one doing this to her. She sat on the couch, clutching her phone, debating whether or not to check her messages one more time. So I leaned against the doorway and said, "You seem distracted." She flinched. I took a step forward. "Something on your mind?" She forced a laugh. "No, just work stuff." Lie. She was drowning, and she knew it. I walked over, leaned down, and kissed her forehead gently. "Maybe you should get some rest." She nodded, but I could see it. The fear in her eyes, the doubt, the sheer desperation to figure out what was happening before it was too late. But she didn't realize. It already was. By now, Olivia was barely holding it together. She moved like a ghost through the house, flinching at every notification, her fingers gripping her phone like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. She didn't know what was real anymore, what she had deleted, what had come back, what was waiting for her next. She was exhausted, broken, and tonight, I was going to end it. I waited until she was in the shower. Steam curled under the bathroom door, muffling the sound of running water. She thought she was safe, thought she had a few minutes alone to breathe. She was wrong. I picked up her phone from the nightstand. She had changed her passcode again. It didn't matter. I already knew it. One swipe. The screen unlocked. She had spent the whole day trying to delete things, messages, photos, entire apps. But what she didn't realize was that I had backed everything up. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. And now, I was about to return them to her one last time. I went to her photo gallery and restored everything. The hotel pictures, the mirror selfie with his hand on her waist, the texts she thought were gone forever. Then I set the final trap. I selected a video, the one that showed her in my bed but not with me, and I set it as her lock screen. A perfect welcome message. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it, then sat on the bed, waiting. When she stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, face flushed from the heat, she saw me sitting there, watching her. She hesitated. "Hey." I just smiled, cold, knowing, unforgiving. She swallowed hard, walking to the nightstand, grabbing her phone like she always did. Then she pressed the home button and froze. She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. The blood drained from her face. Her fingers trembled. I could see the exact moment it all crashed down on her. The truth, the realization, the trap. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She turned to me, eyes wide, panicked. I don't. I tilted my head. "What's wrong?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Danny, please, I can explain." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, voice calm. "No, you can't." She broke. Just like that. A sob tore through her as she crumbled onto the bed, shaking her head, gasping for breath, begging. I just watched. No yelling. No assistance. No angel. Because I had already won. She was unraveling all on her own. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, standing up. "Danny, please, I love you," she whispered. I laughed. "No, Olivia. You loved getting away with it." She flinched like I had slapped her. I made a mistake. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No, Olivia. A mistake is dropping your phone in the sink. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary." I took a step closer, towering over her. "What you did, that was a choice." She sobbed harder, her shoulders shaking. "Please tell me we can fix this." I stared at her for a long moment, then smirked. Cold, cruel, final. And in the softest voice possible, I whispered, "You taught me how to delete things that don't matter." Then I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because now she was the one who had been erased. Forever.